episode of Real Talk. We want to thank our sponsors at Park Bank. Thank you for being committed to the Real Talk and the Mass 365 and all the work we're doing, highlighting all these most influential people who are doing wonderful work in our community. So we really thank everyone at Park Bank for supporting us. If you want more of this content, make sure you go to our YouTube page, go to wherever you get your podcast, go to that. I'm really proud of the content we have. We just have wonderful people who are just telling their awesome stories. And to segue to our next guest, this is someone I've known for a long time. You can see my smile just changed. Someone who I have so much respect for, who's been in the game and the grind for a long time and who's been successful at a long time. Yeah, older I get, I appreciate people who at longevity at a high level. I appreciate that more as I go on. And this woman has been just someone who gets it done, gets the work done, and consistently. I would almost call her like Miss 414, right? Like she's like Milwaukee's finest. Janine Edwards, how are you?
I am doing good. I'm like, you're like a bunch of flattery, so I'm going to suck it all up. But
it's true. Facts. Yeah. These are facts.
I'm doing really well, but thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, of course. Miss, I just thought about that. Miss 414, right? Like you are like, you know, all of Milwaukee too, right? So Milwaukee is different from Madison. It's, different sections, but there's like the corporate Milwaukee, there's a community Milwaukee, right? There's the suburbs of Milwaukee, and you know all of it. Like you've kind of intertwined yourself to all of it, which is a skill set that most people can't do. So I would actually love to get to some point of how you did that as a Black woman. Mm-hmm. How did you navigate that stuff? But first, let me talk about your company, because you're a partner at P3 Development, right?
Yeah, P3 Development Group.
And what do you guys do?
So we like to define our work as creating solutions. We happen to have a focus on equity and inclusion, but we really develop strategic solutions for clients that are seeking to drive equitable change. And that looks so different depending on the client. We work across sectors. So to your point about knowing folks in all the sectors, we really think that that's one of our value propositions, is being able to speak to clients about what's happening in fields or areas that they don't really focus in. So it's been great work. And we are celebrating our 10th year in business this year.
That's so impressive, right? Because most businesses fail like within a year, especially small businesses. And then being a Black-led organization in Wisconsin for 10 years, it's almost unheard of.
It's been a really great ride. So I credit, of course, my partner, Dominique Samari, and the rest of our team. We've had a team of consultants that have supported our journey for 10 years. And of course, just the entire city, the state, the country, all of our clients. It's been really good. So, yeah.
It's so impressive. And, you also kind of like, you have a background like me, sort of like you worked in the government for a while. So you were deputy secretary, Wisconsin tourism. I think we met, that's when we met around that time, I think, when you were there, right? Mm-hmm. And what were you doing before that?
So before that, well, a lot of people don't know, I'm actually a recovering engineer and attorney. So I practiced engineering for a short stint in the manufacturing space. So after undergrad, I moved to Houston, Texas, and I worked with Texas Instruments for a few years, and then moved back to Milwaukee to be close to home and family, to go to law school. So I came out of Marquette Law. I'm not going to say how long ago that was. It's been some time. So I practiced law, transactional law, for a short period of time. I did some policy work, worked at the YWCA, and I did all that before I came to Madison to be there and to have that wonderful, I kind of always call it like my very first highly visible leadership platform experience. It kind of catapulted me into a whole world of relationships and friendships, and quite honestly, work that I never could have imagined was possible. So I loved being at the Department of Tourism.
So where were you born? Were you born in Houston, or where were you born? Wisconsin?
Yeah, born in Milwaukee. So born
Okay.
in Milwaukee, grade school in Milwaukee. So if anybody's listening out there that's part of the St. Agnes family, I went to private parochial school and then ended up at Morris Middle School for 1 year and then Rufus King High School. So
Oh, King, that's a famous school.
it
Okay.
is. I always say leaders are born at Rufus King. So it was a really great ride for me. But then I went to Purdue University.
Oh, Boilermakers. That's a
Boiler.
that's a pretty campus. That's a pretty campus out in West Lafayette. That's a pretty.
Um, it's interesting because I had a chance to go back last year to celebrate kind of 25 years of the Black cultural experience. I was part of a Black cultural center that's on campus that really drives a lot of cultural programming. So we had a big reunion and I was back on campus. It's grown so much since I was there, but it's a beautiful campus.
It really is. So let's start going back to being Miss 414, right? So it started in Milwaukee. And, I always give my Milwaukee family who come on here, I always give y'all a hard time. One saying y'all got all the people of color, but y'all don't have a mayor of color. But that's okay. I'm not, no shade. No, actually, that's shade. Actually, that is shade. No, actually, it is shade. That is shade. No, that's shade. That's absolute shade. Like, come on now. Y'all need to do better than that. Step up, Milwaukee. I say that in love, though.
Yeah, always in love.
Always in love. So talk about growing up in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
The segregation, some of the challenges in the schools, like you went from a private school to the public sector, the public schools. What was that like growing up in Milwaukee? Because, we hear people in Madison Parson State think of Milwaukee like, ooh, Milwaukee, right? But you survived and thrived. So how was that growing up into the school system?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great question. And it really, for me at least, it's the beginning of us all sharing our narratives in a different way. There's a lot of things that people focus on as far as kind of the negative or the brand drags, as I would call them, for Milwaukee. But when I grew up in Milwaukee, Milwaukee was the place to be. I mean, it was thriving. My father was a machinist. He retired from Rexnord. My mother is an educator, so she retired from Milwaukee Public Schools.
Oh.
So I credit my understanding about systems and just growing up with a tremendous amount of love and support from having a family that really worked hard, had a great work ethic, but more importantly, always really set out there this vision for what was possible for us. And even though I come from a very religious Christian Church of God in Christ family, they were very open to living their own dreams, but then encouraging me to do the same. So they just always said, like, you can do whatever you want to do. And they set me up for success. I think about the parks. When I think about growing up, I think about the lakefront. I think about having really great educational experiences, but I also think about how challenging it was for me as an individual. So I have vitiligo, which is, of course, no big surprise. But for me, it was a very early decision to be bold and to be a person to take risks. And I think I framed that way of thinking primarily from having vitiligo and saying, like, I have to lean in. I can't hide. So I had to really take advantage of that in particular. But that was really a driving force for my childhood.
Wow. So that's deep, right? So I never even thought about that from perspective. Because one, I would think, well, how do you survive in Milwaukee just being a Black person? Mm-hmm. Then being a Black woman, how would you survive in Madison? But you're saying, and I'm going to mispronounce the name. So how do you say it again? Vitiligo?
Yeah, it's vitiligo. So of course I got my hand up so you can see it. But the reality is we all have something, right? No matter what it is. I just think that it became a strong suit for me. It was something to say, well, shoot, I have it. My parents said, you still have to do everything you're expected to do. There are no shortcuts. But it really created an opportunity, I think, for me at a very early age to appreciate relationships and how to lean in. When people didn't want to introduce themselves to me, I would always make the decision, I have to own my space and I have to own leaning into introducing myself or being around people. So it kind of came second nature. I was always a party planner. I'm a big hip hop head still. So, it just came with the territory.
Well, we'll come back to it. Before we go, we'll talk top 5 MCs all time. We'll come back to that though. We'll top 5. I want to hear that hip hop. But okay, I'm curious, you growing up, it sounds like you had a real big self confidence about your identity. Mm-hmm. And someone has daughters. That's one thing I'm always trying to impress: identity, confidence, identity, self-belief, like confidence, like identity. And you also talked about like you had a sense of vision. Do you think, where did that come from? Like, where did you get that? Was that your parents, or where did that sense of identity come? Because as a child, to have like I'm going to say the word, Ventilago, and being a Black woman in Milwaukee, that's a challenge within itself, right? But what I know about you is you are a confident Black woman who gets it done. There's no insecurity. At least, everyone has their own insecurities, right? But I'm like, you are, to me, it's like confidence in, like, when you think of epitome of a proud Black woman, like you, like, are a picture of that for me, right? So it's like, how did you get that?
Mm-hmm. So, well, let's just be honest, right? We're all on a journey. I could definitely say that I am confident now, but there's something about faking it till you make it, actually faking it.
Yeah.
So I think about this journey, and it has been a lot of having a tremendous amount of fear and just pushing through in spite of that. So the self-awareness, I think, is where we all start, right? It's just like, okay, let me accept that this is real, that I'm afraid to be around people. I don't love to push myself and be out front, but taking that fear and actually doing something with it, I mean, that's a mindset. And kind of going back to this idea of taking risks, just being willing to step out, not knowing what's going to happen, not being sure of things. I think I have taken a lot of risk, and I think that kind of pops out in my career journey. There have been times where people have said, like, why you want to go to law school? Why do you want to now own your own business? And so for me, it has been this journey of walking through the open doors and recognizing that the closed doors are closed for a reason, right? You can walk up to it, and if it's not an opportunity, it's like, okay. But then being willing to, as people would say, to fail fast and fall forward, to say like, okay, learn that. I don't have to relive that. Let me move through that. But I definitely say for people who have young girls, including you really just have to keep encouraging them. You're never going to get it right. Yeah. It's been a part of my journey is even admitting that to my parents. Like, I thought they were messing up, but I turned out right anyway. So I think that we have the opportunity to take bold and intentional risks. And I would encourage people to build their muscle up around that. But I also come from a family of entrepreneurs. So I very early on also appreciated the entrepreneurial mindset and just being very comfortable with ambiguity and having faith. I grew up in a church called Faith Temple. So that mustard seed of faith is real, right? You only need a little bit of something until it actually grows. And so just work with the little bit that you have.
What I love about what you talked about is, like, when you start listening to people who are very successful and talking to as many people as I do, there's always themes. Mm-hmm. One is getting over the fear, like the people have fear. And everyone, I tell people all the time, people are successful. All of us have fear, but we deal with it. We accept it. We deal with it head on, right? So hearing you say you dealt with your fear head on is something. And then you talked about, being an entrepreneur and taking risks. And your faith plays a part of that, right? Like I almost think as being a person of color, to be successful, you have to take some risk, because you have to get out your comfort zone. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but you have to take those risks. You have to kind of, take those opportunities. Because when I decided, I ran for office, and all people are like, why'd you run for office? And like all the stuff, like people ask me, like, I just had faith. I just did it, right? And I would say, if you're going to fail, fail fast. That's one of my favorite sayings. So what happens when you're in that? What's your thought process, Janine, when you're saying, okay, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to go to law school, or I'm going to create my own business. Fear kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, what's your thought process to get you through it? Can you articulate what that is? Like, how do you get through that?
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess, a really important question. I think for me, it has been pulling from inside, right? So we all have a reservoir of strength inside. So faith is big in my family, prayer, all of that. Outside of just that fundamental core values and pulling from that, I do think it is the idea of like, what do I have to lose? I hate to sound like this man's name that I won't say his name, but what do you have to lose, right? Like, I mean, if you take the risk and you don't get what you want, I mean, you'll be closer. So it is something about that always, I think, is a driving. When we first started P3 Development Group, the numbers of people who, one, said like, well, the consultant market is full of people already doing this work. Two, the number of times that people have said, well, like businesses that do professional services, they don't really last that long, or you should be concerned about that. But more importantly, there were a lot of people, I think, that discouraged me from engaging with a partner, which is very intriguing and interesting, considering the fact that 10 years later, I think one of the reasons we've been so successful is the fact that we're enough alike to think the same about things, but enough difference of perspective, more of an insider outsider perspective, to be able to really bring the best of what we have. And I think people thought that because they've had many examples of two women in particular working together, but two African-American women who have run into big problems trying to compromise and to do something together. But my success has been built from being involved with teams, strong partnerships, and understanding that there's a lot that you can gain from, if you want to take that risk, taking it with others is the best way to step out. Having the ability to bounce things off of each other and the comfort of saying, like, I may be afraid alone, but I always have a bench of supporters, of people in the cheering section. I'm a big person also that I'm like all about the round robin perspective. So I'll get perspective. Now, I may not agree with all of the perspective, but I seek perspective intergenerationally across race, ethnicity, because I want the benefit of people's thinking. That's how you build teams. That also happened to be, and now I'm making that connection even in this conversation. That was my undergrad focus on team, the Deming method for engineering. How do you create really good teams?
Wow.
And teams always starts with recognizing everybody's got something valuable to bring.
Again, you're saying this is wisdom, because, and I was like, my face probably when you said people don't want to have a partner, I look like you learn, you know this, you cannot do anything alone. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care if you're Michael Jordan, you can't do it without Scottie Pippen. I don't care if you were Jay-Z, you couldn't do it without Damon Dash. You can't do this stuff, but you can't build anything meaningful without having a real team. And I love what you said, because when I'm starting to create or think about ideas, I take my ideas and I talk to people I trust, obviously, but who have different sectors. I'll talk to the 60-year-old. I'll talk to the 20-year-old. Like I want people to pick it through so I can that's my creating process, right? Like, how do I do that? What do you think? And to get the best of all worlds to come together. So I love that. Yeah. You have built a P3 development in Milwaukee, and you've connected yourself to a lot of part of Milwaukee. Because to explain to Milwaukee, to people in Madison, for these people of color, a lot of the influence comes from the people of color in the nonprofit sector. Okay. Milwaukee seems to be the other way. Like a lot of the influence of people come from the corporate sector. So it's a different feel to how things work in Milwaukee. But you seem to be connected to all those worlds. So was that intentional, or did that just accidentally happen? And then did you connect that to how that would actually help your business? Because it's almost like connected to you. I think that's part of your business model.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the business model. I don't think we started out, though, thinking about it in that way. I think by the time Dominique and I started to partner, I had already had a lot of these lived experiences, right, across sectors. But I also think that some of it is about, and in Milwaukee in particular, we talk about this all the time, that in order to be a successful leader in Milwaukee, you really have to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in community. So even if you see corporate leaders that are highly visible, that doesn't mean that there are not great leaders. I want to be very clear about this. And unfortunately, Milwaukee, like Madison, has a way of only spotlight or showcasing just a few. Mm-hmm. And even though, of course, I've been a beneficiary of that, right? But it doesn't serve us to have such a small bench being highlighted and showcased. So I think through my experiences, I've recognized that in Milwaukee, you have to be able to have a sense of what's happening across the sectors. And corporate leaders that come into Milwaukee, they usually are pushed out and to engage in community activity in a way that I don't see in a lot of other cities. It's almost like because of philanthropy, because of how corporates engage at the community level, because of just the disparity that exists, there is this kind of way that there's an operating framework, right, behind how the connections work. I did understand and appreciate that. Some of that came from running programs like the Mosaic Partnerships Program, a race relations program that Greater Milwaukee Foundation started, that I had the pleasure, right, of coordinating for years. And after working with 400 leaders, it's pretty easy to map the power dynamic, right, where the resource brokers are. But it's no different at the neighborhood level. We've been highly engaged in resident engagement, neighborhood and community conversations. So you see that same kind of dynamic playing out. If you're a person like me that think that there's great benefit in understanding those flows of reciprocity, those norms, what that social capital is, then in Milwaukee, it's easy to benefit from it. But don't get me wrong, it is work. Like, so I'm not just sitting mapping it out, it's active. My husband is always saying, like, I cannot believe, like, in a week, the number of touch points. And even though I may not be deeply touching folks, I'm pretty consistent. Even like I'm thinking about you, Henry, like, even though I don't know what's going on in your day to day, it's not going to be a year that passes that I'm not like, okay, what's going on? Let me check. Let me see. So I'm running that filter all the time. And of course, it definitely has benefited us in business. But in Black Milwaukee, is we're all 6 degrees. We're all cousins, right?
Yeah, that's right. Everyone, Milwaukee, actually Beloit, like Beloit's the same way. Everyone's related to Beloit. Yeah. It's so interesting. I want to, because I love the networking aspect where you really talk about intentionally networking. And I built what I do, I think well, and one of the few things I do well, I don't want to do a lot well, but what I do well is I invest in people, right? Yeah. So like I invest in people. It's like, I love people. I want people to succeed. Like you went back and you said earlier on, like to highlight a certain amount of people. That's what at 365, I want to make sure we highlight more people. It's because there's so much talent. I remember the first time we did our most influential list, it's true story, Janine. People are like, you have 20 or 40 people on this list. Like 3 years, I could have enough people. Like, well, slow down. Right? For real, for real, like people you would know would say this. Like, and I'm like, now we have so many people on the list that we could do 100 people every year.
Yes.
Every year.
And so thank God for that, right? Like people need these opportunities to be visible. Some of that happens with age, though. I've recognized like my hunger and thirst for visibility. Yeah. Has changed dramatically, right? Now I'm trying to move to the back and trying to identify, what some of my millennial sisters and brothers have said, like, get out the way and let some of these other folks shine. And I try to be real intentional about that. But I also credit the African American Leadership Program, African American Leadership Alliance. Big shout out to the entire team that has created that vehicle for real change in Milwaukee. Because, we get to see where the talent is, every year and identifying folks to participate in the program. In the first couple of years, it was all the people that I knew, right? And I was begging them to participate. Now, year 12, like you said, you're every year surprises such a great number of talented African-American leaders that are right here in our own backyard. They're doing the work. They just don't have the spotlight.
I'm listening to you shaking my head, right? Like you like slowly, I hope people are like slowly picking up her resume, right? She's being humble about it. She talked about the mosaic and she talked about African-American leadership because like if you start to listen to what she's saying, she's building networks. But what's cool about it is you're building networks, but you built a business model around it. Mm-hmm. That's the secret sauce, right? Like you said, solving problems, but you've built a business model around your strengths, around you connecting people, liking people, wanting people to thrive. So also you talk about African-American leadership.
You were saying that because we always talk about it. Like we built this business. That was the other thing that people told us is that we didn't have a real business model. But we built the business based on our own.
I see it.
It's just outright, right? Like, what do we love to do? Because you want to be able to do that every day. Now, don't get me wrong. Some things are frustrating, but people don't, the 3 P's are purpose, passion, and possibility. And so
I like that. Wait, say it one more time. Purpose what?
Purpose, passion, possibility.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
And so we get to choose every day, right? And create our possibility. So we might as well do something you're really, truly passionate about.
And good at, and that can impact people, right? Like it's, like I always tell my friend Michael Johnson, I talk to him all the time. I give him an analogy like, hey, slow down, bruh. Slow down. And I want you to become Dr. Dre. Become Dr. Dre. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, Dre still had a high profile, right? He was still Dr. Dre, but Dr. Dre's behind Eminem. He's about NWA. He's about all these, these are white bands you don't even recognize. Dre helped other people with his beats. So he invested his strength, his talent to help other people. He's still Dr. Dre. He's still a legend, still an icon, but he put that in other people. And because of that, his Dr. Dre's touches will be forever, right? Because he's hands, you can't say, well, you have Eminem, you got 50. They just keep going down the line, right? So I see it the same when I hear that in you. That's what I hear in you. Like, I'm going to be the beats and I'm going to make sure that this person has the beats to be influenced. I'm going to have this person have the beats to do it. The people.
I'm about to get that. Now that's going into my next interview.
Yeah. So I hear that in you, right? I want to talk 2 things before we go. I wanted one, you mentioned your husband.
Yes.
How long you been married, sister? How long you been married?
I've been married for 5 years.
Amen.
Yeah.
I whoever this brother, I gotta hug this brother. Amen, brother. Brother, I gotta hug this brother. He has to be a strong man. He has to be a strong man.
Yeah. It's not easy,
Marriage is not easy in general.
Marriage is not easy, kind of being in the fishbowl and just honestly, right? Like I had a full career and before we met even, let alone before we got married. So I really credit him for being just the humble, quiet leader that he is, but he is definitely strong. Take no short about it, but able to manage that because it is a dynamic. And I really want my African-American and Latino and Asian sisters who are highly visible, highly engaged.
You're taking my question. That's what you're going where I'm going.
It's not easy because the world, we haven't caught up, right, with this real understanding of what male, female, or just, even if it's a same sex relationship, but somebody's out front, always, right? Typically, that's usually understood to be the male figure. But I have learned in having conversations with a lot of my sister friends that we're all struggling with changing the norms and the narrative around that. And just recognizing that, my husband is a leader in his own right. But because I had so much visibility coming in and to this marriage, it was like, who is this guy, right? Who is he? And because another little word to the wise for young ladies, just keep it quiet, keep it low. Don't share it all at the beginning. At the outset, we were together for a long time before we got married. Some people, even when I posted our wedding pic, were like, you got married? Who is this person?
But
But
you built it
it's
the
a
right way.
journey. It's hard. It's hard for these men. So I really want to give any man that's dealing with it some credit.
So, there's so many questions I have, right? Because I do think the dynamic of what you're saying is, one, is the balance of being just a professional and working, not just a professional, but working.
Yeah.
And then try to keep balance of family in this day and age is tough in general, right? Just and then if you're high, like people know you and people know who you are and you're in the public a lot, that's be another layer. But also, let's be real, like being a Black woman is a different layer to it, right? Because I think sometimes people put the dynamic of the white community to the Black community. You can't. Like it's a different relationships. Because fellas, that y'all might get mad at me. I'm gonna get some hate email about this. But Black women have overshadowed us in so many ways. Black women are more educated than we are.
Yeah.
They start more businesses than we do. Right now, we get paid more than they do per dollar. But 5-10 years, that's going to change, guaranteed, because these sisters are out here working and getting degrees, starting business, entrepreneurship, which changes the dynamic of the historical, traditional family, where the Black man was the one who was the lead and was making the money. That might work in the white dynamic, and the Black dynamic, that is going to change. It is changing.
It is changing.
It is changing.
Aspirated by. So I'm gonna be really honest. This is real talk.
That's
so let's keep it real. We all have to learn how to be better about engaging couples for their unique assets and strengths. The number of times when Antonio and I first kind of
Antonio Riley?
Antonio Butts. No.
Is that your husband? Is that your husband? Okay, well, you got to speak it clear now.
Antonio Butts, my husband.
Okay.
We would be in settings and people had, they would ignore him or they would ask him silly questions like, are you an attorney as well? I mean, it's just that mindset that we have around how people come together with what's important to them. But I'm so blessed to have, we had similar values that was important to me from the beginning, but more importantly, this interest in entrepreneurship and music. Those are the real things that brought us together. But people always want to lead with like your title.
What do you do?
And what do you do?
And here's the interesting thing about that from a Black man perspective.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe in systematic racism.
Yes.
And you believe just by data that they lock up Black men in Wisconsin. Let's just stick with Wisconsin. 50% of our Black men are locked up.
Right.
Okay. So that means these Black women, if they choose to be with a Black man, my wife is white, so I'm just
right.
Right. If you choose to be with a Black man, that means the chances are you're going to have to be with a man who might have been incarcerated.
Yeah. Or just may not have had the same life experience. And this goes back to leadership.
That has to be okay, though. My point is,
that's okay.
That has to be okay.
But it does require there's some clarifications. It's not without challenge. It's not without right sizing and understanding what that dynamic is and how best to manage it, right? Because that's part of it. But I do think we need to have that. That's the real talk conversation. And
that's a real conversation, right? Because that's a different, that changes the dynamic of the traditional system in how at least the white culture has defined relationships.
Yeah.
And for the Black dynamic, it's just a different dynamic, right? And for Black men, I would say this over and over, Black women should be studied. They should be, studied about how they have overcome so much and how they're thriving. But also, we have to be real, how Black men have been systematically broken down, separated from the family, have been locked up and jailed, and broken out families on every metrics you look at. Having families helps on every metrics. How long you live, income, all that stuff has been broken down. So the question is, how do you connect that, right? Yeah. So it's interesting hearing you are articulating that and you already thinking that stuff through about how you with your man Antonio and talking about, are you an attorney? What? What if he's not? What if he's taking out? What if he's a garbage person? Or what if he what's wrong with that?
But there is a conversation. It's a leadership conversation as well, right? Because leaders are everywhere. Leadership doesn't look like title status. It really is like, are people leading their lives? And do you have the ability to leave and there are leaders that are everywhere in our
level. Yep.
And these, we can get into a broader conversation about, status quo and norms and some of the biggest perpetrators of that, of course, are our own. That's not to say that systemic racism is not real and that white dominant culture is not real and ever present. But we also have to look at how we do it to ourselves, some of the expectations.
Now that's a real talk. That's a whole conversation right there of
Let's have a panel. Let's have a panel.
We should like just on Black expectations. We'll talk about Black excellence. What does that mean? Yes. And what are we doing in our own house? Because there, like you said, there's definitely racism. There's institutional racism, systematic racism. There's no one can deny it. But what are we doing in our own house to make sure that we're taking it? And you argue that we are. I think we're doing more than people think we are.
Yeah, we are. But in some instances, we just don't. I mean, you can't do better unless you can't see the impact of these systems and how they have really ingrained this mindset in everything that we do. I've been unpacking a lot of that because, it all starts with all of us doing the individual work and just thinking about how it was socialized, right? There's a lot of Catholic dogma that's still part of my mindset. Being grown up in the Pentecostal Church of God in Christ, like what are these systems that have really influenced me? What do they mean about how I show up in the world? And that work is, of course, is important for, Caucasians. It's important for us too, to best understand what the impacts of the system have been on us and how they've kind of messed us all up.
That's good. And I've been having this conversation with my friends, always saying we have to make sure that we don't take the overall white culture and accept it as our culture, because historically that's not true. And if we start defining success, how the white culture has defined success, and even if you look at it, they're not even happy with it at the core.
Right.
And we try to take that on ourselves, make that successful, then something's off with us, right? Because, and again, I'm on my soapbox here, but I'll say it over and over again. What Black people in general have overcome since slavery in this country, I'm talking about this country. I'm not talking about Africa, the motherland, I'm talking about the United States. What we have overcome is nothing but less than miraculous.
Yeah, and they're still overcoming, right? Because this is going to be a long journey. I'm happy for people's wokeness and awareness, but all of us need to be on some kind of spiritual journey. As it relates to just understanding who we are, how we show up in the world.
But Janine, that's my point though, right? From a personal Black perspective, it's always been a spiritual journey for us. You've never separated the spiritual journey for us. The white system, not as much, right? For us, it's always been a spiritual journey, so you can't separate it. So this is a whole different conversation that this is why I love these. I love talking to people like you. But okay, I want to get ready to go here, but let's go back to hip hop.
Okay.
Hip hop. Be slow now, because the top five. Let's be slow now, because we can. This might divide us right now, so I'm not. I gotta be prayerful on this before I ask. But okay, your top five.
I'm trying right now. I'm trying to write down my five because it changes, right? It's changed over time. I'm big on lyrical content, which is hardcore MC. Like I need to be able to hear it. I like stories, so let me start there.
So you're gonna say Nas? I hear Nas in there somewhere.
So my top five, and this is a little bit it's debatable. Let's just say that.
All right.
For sure, is Biggie, Big Daddy Kane.
Oh hey, no half stepping.
Rakim.
Okay.
Jay-Z, Nas. That's my list. That's what I'm going with today. It may change.
No, I accept that. I mean, Big Daddy. People sleep on Big Daddy Kane.
Sleep on Big Daddy Kane.
Yeah.
But he's the beginning, right?
Of all of them. Yeah, all
Biggie,
of them.
Jay-Z, like all of that. But I love the storytelling. I need to be able to have a picture painted for me.
Yeah,
I'm still old school gal.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that top five. That's a good one. That's a solid.
Your top five. I mean, we got to hear yours.
That's true. See, okay, so if I had to say today. I would have LL on there.
Oh, interesting.
And I would have LL because of longevity. He was platinum records for 10 years straight, different generations. He was back there in Run DMC all the way to the 90s. Like, so he has longevity. I'm big on longevity at this point, as I said earlier. Mm-hmm. Definitely Hove. Jay-Z is just what he's done, his lyrics. Just Jay-Z has to be there. I want to. I gotta go with Big Daddy Kane.
Okay.
So Big Daddy Kane has to be in there for sure. I'm not a big Rakim fan. Like Eric being Rakim, like I'm not really.
Not a Rakim fan.
The East Coast, like I
mean, that's pretty clear that I'm like all the way to the East Coast. I mean,
clearly. Nas. Oh, Biggie. I gotta forget Biggie. Mm-hmm. And I might put Pac in there. People more popular hit him up, but there was Dear Mama and Pac had a journey. So I probably would put Pac in there.
Yeah, Pac makes my list. So I kind of interchange sometimes. I take Nas off the list and put Pac in that space. Yeah. Just to show a little bit of more global representation here. But
yeah, and I'm careful too, because some of that gangster rap stuff that older I get, my perspective changes on that whole train. That's a whole different conversation too. But
you were gonna say, I don't know how old you are. You seem kind of young, Henry. I'm just gonna be honest.
No, girl, I'm 47. I'm 47. So no.
Okay, so I still got you beat. But I'm thinking about like people usually say, "Yay, they love Kanye." People love
Kanye's
Eminem. I've never been a huge Eminem fan, but for, a variety of reasons, but people love 50 Cent. I mean, I'm surprised, like, who makes people's top 5? So
yeah, well, I bet people say Drake, right? Like, Drake would make people's 5. So I Rick Ross, because I was thinking Cube. I was thinking about, do I put Cube in there? Like, Cube was like,
You like Rose, huh? I like Rose.
Look, I give up. This is real talk. Because I've given up a lot of that gangster rap, what you would call gangster rap and stuff. But that Rick Ross, he's hard for me to put down. Ross, he's hard for me to put down.
It definitely hits different. It's all of the music and the big bolds.
Yeah.
The floss, right?
Yeah. I just, when he tells stories, I hear like he's being authentic, and Ross is hard for me to put down. Like if there's a crutch I have right now would be Rick Ross. That's my crutch.
I know this is real talk, but we're going to have to come back because this is really my real passion, going back to passion, leading with passion.
Yeah.
Events, parties. I don't do them a lot now, but just bringing people together with music.
So let's what we do, because my plan for 2022, I actually written it down this morning.
Okay.
Was one of the things I want to do, and when COVID's over, is start having more intentional events of getting people together, not around networking, because we're doing that already through our summits, but like socially, just getting us together where you could be whoever
you want to be,
but just come, like be you, like come and just be you, like be. Yeah. But intentionally,
we're building out a space for exactly that. So our space on King Drive, we're literally recreating that space. That's where P3's home is, but creating a space for us to do that.
Yeah, let's like just come and.
Yeah, we all want to be ourselves.
Yeah, be you. Like I get we're all, a lot of us are high profile, and one thing goes wrong. Like, I get all that, but we also just go enjoy yourselves a little bit. Yes. Where no one's going to judge you. Like this is, have to be like what happens here. Like, yes. But be grown. Like,
no judgment zone. How about that?
Yeah, like if you want to get on and dance, bro. So dance, like do your thing. Like
that's the one thing in Wisconsin. I assume is why when I was in Madison, I think it's kind of the same as like other places in the country, particularly like the culture of New Orleans.
Down south,
literally get to be your full self. So on the weekend, you're a complete fool.
Yeah.
When you show up on Monday, you're not going to be judged by that. Like your whole life is not going to then. I feel like that's part of the issue is the facade. So
Yeah, well, part of that is because we grew up, we're in a majority white area.
Majority white, and yeah,
and so we
deal with that. You can't handle the heat, right? You can't handle the kind
of. People feel like they always have to be on, right? Yeah. So I have to always be on, or I'm that one black exec or a person of color exec, so I can't have to be. And that's not true. Like that's not like you said. Like you go down south, okay, like after 5 o'clock. You know what I mean? Whatever you do, the people are getting engaged. So I'm glad you said that. We should between us, both of us, we know everyone probably. We should do that. Like sincerely, because I think, you know what? I'm going to start bringing people together around just socially, just get together. So,
let's do it. Let's curate some awesome, because the other thing is, I think what you're doing, of course, with this platform, but what you've always done is to really get people to see the diversity of like. Because some of it is you can show up at places. That's what I've heard a lot from transplants, right? And you're like, it's going to be the same 20 people. And that's primarily because we're building it from a professional lens versus us going a little bit deeper and understanding that, there are probably another 50 people that are hip hop heads that they may not talk about that, right? I feel like this is a gift, just that I'm able to be authentic today with you and be in this format. Talk about my life, my professional experience, but there's so much more,
and who you are, right? And that's, you get to bring your whole stuff to the table. That's what, for all you people who are listening about D&I and inclusion work and all that stuff, this is it. I want to bring my whole authentic self to the table and be accepted. And
belong. And people say, you know what, that's good. Yep. So I assume you're going to wrap us up with a freestyle.
I wish if I could, I would. I can't, so I won't.
Okay.
But if you want to bless us with 16, I mean, if you want to,
I got a rap. It's a written rap. It's old, so I had to spice it up a little bit before I come back. But when we come back together, I'm gonna be ready for you.
Is that a kind of a yes, or is that a real yes? Like I come back, like I'll hold you to. You know me, I hold it like, okay, you said last time we're the 16.
I'm gonna be ready. I'm saying 16 hours. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I'm gonna be my own track with me too. Like
there you go. I'm all with it. Okay. Last question I ask everyone.
Yes.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Wow. Well, a big part of the work, I've been working a lot on my purpose statement. So one of the things I'm in is a coaching program. But I really feel like God's purpose for me and why he made me this way is really the gift of kind of being seen, right? I can't hide, so I might as well use that gift. So I would say, like, just to enhance the invulnerability, enhance visibility, like these things about myself that I am working on. They, in some way, shape, or form, hopefully they are my superpower, right? They're the thing they're what's pulling me forward to show up in this world. So I would just want to have enhanced invulnerability, enhanced visibility, to be able to see myself and to see others more clearly. Because I feel like that's all we have. We can connect in a variety of ways, but just like the getting got good in this interview, when I finally was able to let go of like, oh, I'm here wearing my P3 work and I could just really be open to be vulnerable and be seen with you and whoever is watching this. So that's my superpowers.
I love that. Like just being your full self at your full capacity.
Power of full selfness, the power of full, for us all to be seen for who we really are and just to have that more boldly. That sounds like a dream, to let go of all of this stuff that I've been carrying with us, that all of us carry with us from childhood, and to just be able to connect with people from that space.
I love that you're on that journey. Just that you're intentionally on that journey means it's going to happen for you, that you're going to people talk about imposter syndrome and all that stuff. Like, you're on that journey, so you're going to do it because you're focused on it. It's intentional. You can tell this whole interview, you've talked about that in one way or the other. So that's fascinating to hear. So thank you, 414. Thank you, Milwaukee, for letting us borrow one of your own, one of your Black excellence, one of your dynamic power brokers. Thank you for letting us borrow for a good hour here. Thank you for everything you're doing, sister. We appreciate you. We support you. We love everything you're doing. Let us know how we can support you. If you want more of this content, make sure you go to our YouTube page. You also go to our Master 365 page to get this content, get this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. And we will see you next time on Real Talk.
This is 365 Media.